Story number 1. I can't always control my werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC. I was once on a camping trip with a guy who got drunk and violent with me. Out of nowhere, a big dog growled at him and got between us. I followed this large but very young dog into the woods, and he led me to a ranger station. The ranger helped me to get home and was surprised when I told him the dog was wild. He'd assumed the canine was my pet because of the way it never left my side. When I told him I never had a dog in my life, not even when I was a kid, the ranger said, "Well, you got one now." This was how Caesar the giant dog came to be my best friend and protector. At first we lived together in my studio apartment, but that proved to be difficult for both of us. I had good luck as soon as I met Caesar though, and I was soon able to afford to move us both out to the suburbs. Where we live now is almost the country, really. We're at the edge of the burbs in an area I won't mention because I don't want to spook my neighbors. Nothing I've said so far is spooky, but trust me, I'm just getting started. Once we were out of the city, Caesar took to walking around on his hind legs. He was not yet 1 full year old, but he was already as tall as I was on his hind legs. Of course, within a few more months, he was taller than me, and taller than anybody. He stood eye to eye with me when on all fours by then. Now he's taller than I am, even down on all fours. He's a big fella, and that's not his fault. That was decided for him. The trouble is that what's played to him can sometimes seem like aggression to human beings, as in the case of some of my neighbors. So far, people still smile and say hello to me when I run into them in town, but part of that is that I no longer bring Caesar around where I expect people to be. Instead, I put him in the back of my van, and we drive to a local natural area. I let him roam, and I do my work using Wi-Fi when it's available, or I save things to upload an email once I'm back within range. I've got extra computer batteries and 3 different kinds of rechargers in the van, so I can usually keep working no matter how crazy it gets with Caesar. The strangest thing that happened with Caesar was the time that I woke up hearing glass breaking downstairs in the house. I whispered for Caesar, who usually slept on a rug on the floor near my bed, but he wasn't there. Creeping downstairs, I saw a dark silhouette of a muscular man standing and staring away from me at a window. Maneuvering around to get a better look, I saw that the glass in the window was broken, and I didn't understand why the burglar was staring at the window that he must have broken to get into the house. It was quite disorienting when I heard the big man growl. I realized that was not a burglar. That was my dog Caesar, who had somehow grown shoulders and seemed much more manlike than I had ever seen him look before. I called out to him softly, and he turned to face me, allowing me a view of the broken window, with a man trying to climb through it. When he was about halfway through, Caesar stopped looking at me and dove at that man, snapping at him and eliciting screams of horror and pain from the burglar. I called to him more loudly, and he pulled back enough to allow the man to escape. I called the police immediately and told them the entire story, including that my dog had drawn blood and that it might help them identify the guy. After the police brought the guy in, they told me that he claimed I was keeping a bear in my house and that he had been bitten by a grizzly. When I put a leash on Caesar and brought him out to meet the officers, they admitted they might have thought they were being bitten by a grizzly too. I felt very proud of Caesar that the cops fussed over him. I also felt frightened of him for the first time though, because none of those officers even asked to step foot inside the house. They all seemed too respectful of Caesar's space to do that. And if those big men were afraid of him, I wondered if maybe I should start to be as well. It's kind of a cliche about dogs chasing mailmen, but that's actually what really brought all of this to a head. Caesar got out and chased the mailman, and the guy had to go to the emergency room, claiming he was having a heart attack. I'm sure it was a panic attack, but I still feel badly about what happened. He's saying he's going to get my dog put to sleep, and I'm not sure he can actually do that. Of course, it would take an army to bring Caesar down, but it's not like it would be impossible. So I feel like I need to move if I'm going to keep this dog. But I'm already living out by the woods as it is. Where else am I going to go? The moon? Alaska? Of course, if I lived alone, I would have so many more options than now. But could I ever live alone again? It would sort of have to be Caesar's choice, wouldn't it? I'm pretty sure that if I drove him out to the woods and left him, he'd get back home before I did. My car has its own Wi-Fi, so one of my friends suggested to me that Caesar and I could go on permanent camping vacation, living in the woods full time. I expect this would work for Caesar, but I find camping tiring. I need to sleep for 2 days when I come back from camping. It would be a very hard lifestyle in my opinion. Personally, I would rather have a house or apartment. And really any place Caesar goes, he's in a position to cause trouble, for himself and for me. He has his own sense of justice. He stopped that man from attacking me when I first met him, and he's been my protector ever since. He just comes from a point of view that all male men are evil, that's all. He can't help it. He is a dog. Most of the time, anyway. I know that it's not only human beings who can become werewolves. I have seen my Caesar grow up into a grizzly-sized monster of a creature, ready to tear a man's face off if he dared intrude on our space. I have seen him develop wide shoulders when he needed them, when he wanted to turn that would-be burglar away. He's not an ordinary dog. He's not even an ordinary giant dog. He's Caesar, emperor of all dogs, and at least for now, he's my protector. Story number 2. I can't control my werewolf. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I let my best friend in the world go fend for himself in the woods of Wisconsin because I can no longer control my pet werewolf. It was foolish of me to take him in. Well, that's not true. I really didn't know what he was when I found him alone while hiking in the Gwynn State Forest area in northern Michigan. But when he proved to be too violent to be around other dogs, and when his paws started to look more like little clawed hands every day, I should have become suspicious. When he started walking on his hind legs and opening doors by himself, I shouldn't have laughed and encouraged him. When my girlfriend left me in a fight over this dog, you would think that might have awakened me that something was wrong. Besides, I should have been documenting all of this since the beginning. Shoulda, coulda, woulda. I probably could have donated him to science instead of letting him roam wild, if I had been more alert about all of this from the start. By the time Mikey became too violent, I really had to make a move quickly. I had to take him someplace where he could live his own life. I didn't have time to research different organizations to find out if he would be treated humanely or merely dissected and experimented on. I feel as though if I had been documenting his growth from puppy to man thing, I could also have gone public about him when I donated him to science. If people knew about his existence, then whatever organization I gave him to would have been more motivated to treat him well, and also to keep the public up to date as to his condition and state of being. But I didn't though, and I suddenly found myself terrified of him. Although this situation progressed rapidly downhill once it started, it wasn't literally overnight. I would say that Mikey and I were still friends about 2 weeks before he began to get out of control, and that each day after that, he saw me less and less as another person, and more as just food, or an obstacle to getting food. I felt like he was going to finish me off the next time he randomly got angry at me, and I was very scared of him in those last few days. I got a tranquilizer rifle, and we loaded it with enough to take down a bull moose. And then we carried Mikey into the back of my friend's pickup, and we took off, speeding past every speed limit on every road we drove on. I don't want to say where we intended to leave him. except that it was up in one of those forests in northern Michigan. We didn't get that far, though. It was just a little bit north of Crandon and Matonga Lake when a motorcycle cop pulled us over for speeding. We pulled off the road to the right side on Wisconsin 32 heading north, and the cop pulled his bike off just behind us. While we sat there waiting for him to walk over to us, Mikey woke up in the truck, and he stood up on his hind legs to have a look around. Well, when Mikey saw that cop, he was thinking he saw lunch, and he chased that police officer back to his motorcycle. I saw that officer drive the wrong way down the highway, with my oversized former pet chasing him. It was only a 2-lane highway, so when traffic came, the cop steered over back into his lane, and old Mikey ran off into the woods to the side of the road. My friend hit the gas and got us out of there, and that was the last I've heard of Mikey, at least so far. I've heard plenty of stories about dogs finding their way home over hundreds of miles of distance, but I'm kinda hoping that Mikey finds enough game where he is to stay wild and free. I hope he develops instincts to stay away from human habitation. I hope he finds wild areas to stay in. For him to walk back to where I live would mean marching through suburban land or even some cities. I think something terrible would happen to someone long before he got back to my part of the state. I hate to even think about it. I truly hope Mikey finds his home in the wilderness. Where he ran off was near the Crandon Ribbed Fen State Natural Area, the North Otter Creek State Natural Area, and other hotspots like that. He'd be much better off staying up there than coming back to see me. And I hope he realizes that for himself. Because I can't control my werewolf. Story number 3. I can't always control my werewolf transformations. Dear Scary Stories NYC, I have pursued occult studies since the time I could begin reading on my own. I wanted to learn to have powers over other humans, and I would say that for the most part I have failed in that endeavor. However, I did succeed in turning myself into a werewolf, if you can call such a result a success. Don't worry, I'm not going to get your channel in trouble by explaining the exact procedures involved, but I did eventually find myself becoming something other than myself under the full moon. It was nothing like what I had ever been told about being a werewolf before. In the earlier transformations, I did not see myself change, but others did. I thought it was a joke at first, when all of my 5 friends who were over my place to rewatch our favorite old movie started saying that I was wearing a werewolf mask. They were asking me what it was made of, and I was giving them sarcastic answers, since I felt like I was being left out of an in-joke. I looked at myself in a mirror, and I looked old and tired, but not furry. Then there was another night when I was walking home from the store, and 2 different people on 2 different blocks screamed and ran away from me. I looked at any reflective surface I walked past for the rest of the way home, but I still looked like myself as far as I could tell. So there was no way it could be people pranking me any longer. This wasn't just something my friends were doing. This was something genuinely strange that was happening right after I had gone through ceremonies and procedures, asking to turn myself into a werewolf. Whatever was happening, I felt that it had to be directly related to those rituals and so forth. Then came another night when I woke up realizing I was on a branch of a tree, 20 or 30 feet up in the air, reaching into a hole in the tree, trying to grab a squirrel that was furiously nipping at my hand. What the hell was I doing? I had to climb down, and I suddenly remembered how afraid of heights I can be sometimes. I eventually managed to tumble to the ground clumsily without injuring myself too badly, but I felt very alarmed because I had no memory of how I got myself into that situation. Next, I set up a camera by my bed to record myself while I slept, but I never seemed to change while sleeping from that point forward. The trouble with that is that now I have blackout spells and I wake up in all sorts of weird places. I miss appointments and I can't explain why. I brought this all upon myself, though, because I wanted to be a werewolf. It wasn't inflicted upon me against my will. I did this to myself. I don't think I really understood what I was getting into before I got into it, and I'm pretty sure I'd at least try it in a different way next time. So my advice to you, no matter what kind of werewolf you're trying to become, and no matter what tradition you're following to make the change happen, give yourself 2 years to research and learn first. Don't jump the gun on making moves to become a werewolf until you're a complete expert on werewolves. Don't be like me. I know I did something wrong, and I know this could have been prevented if I had more patience with my studies of lycanthropy. I feel certain that I would have had far more control over my life if I hadn't jumped into this in such a wild and unprepared fashion. That's not to say that I didn't study the subject or that I'm not studying it now. It's just to say that I looked into this all for less than a year, probably less than 10 months now that I'm doing the math in my head. I was full of myself, and I thought I was an expert already, but an expert wouldn't have created the situation that I have created for myself. I don't really know what I should or can do, because I can't always control my werewolf transformations. Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America. A lot of the stories we run on this channel are supposed to be true, but it's not like I have budget or time to look into any of the claims made. Someone who made her living looking into Dogman claims, though, was the late great Linda Godfrey. If you like the stories on this show, then you should check out this incredible audiobook from Linda called Real Wolfmen, True Encounters in Modern America. Linda goes back to the 1930s and tells a number of the better researched Dogman and werewolf stories of the 20th and 21st centuries. It's a great overview of the subject matter, whether you're new to it or even if you think you know all the stories. It's available in audiobook, audio CD, paperback, or Kindle forms at the address in the description for this video. The audiobook is over 8 hours and it's probably the best deal there. Plus, if you use the link in the description, supposedly you're helping us out here in some way that I'm still learning about. And now here's your old pal Bigfoot with an important message about today's executive producer. Please join me in thanking John, cause with Dogman he's always on. Tonight's episode is brought to you thanks to John Smith, who is a member of our PayPal subscribers club. That means he gets to see our secret uncensored Dogman and Werewolf stories, of which we are putting out 2 this weekend. Or maybe 1 today and the other Monday, not sure, but you get the point. We do 4 a month, usually on Sundays, but I was sick last week so we're catching up this weekend. Find out more by listening to our international TV spokesmongrel, Henry Lee Dogman. Hank? Thanks, Biggie. And thanks to all of you for watching this far. If you liked it, please click like. If you'd like to see more of our work, please subscribe. And also click that bell icon if you'd like to be notified when we put out a new episode. To become an executive producer, you can donate to us through the thanks button under each of our videos or through our paypal.me/PeterBernard209 page. To receive cool perks like secret uncensored Dogman episodes far too wild to ever run on this channel, you can become a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button, or join our PayPal subscribers club at peterbernard.com. Joining either at the $3 a month level or above gets you access to our over 25 hours of secret uncensored Dogman stories available nowhere else. Do you have a scary story about Dogman or some other kind of high strangeness that happened to you? Let us know by emailing us at scarystoriesnyc@gmail.com or by leaving us a voicemail message at 804-LA-SCARY. You may need to call back on that one. It cuts off after I think 3 minutes. And if you don't want to do any of that stuff, thank you for simply watching to the end. Good night, and have a scary tomorrow.
Come back for more. more scary stories.